In this video, I thought it would be fun to share my art from high school and reflect on my progress. These paintings are very different from my usual art because I always had to follow a specific theme or prompt and there were lots of restrictions. I was also forced to put in a lot more time and effort into these than I usually do, which led to some great results. So here is the first painting. This one, as you can see, is a self-portrait. I think the message of this was supposed to be showing my creative side versus what people kind of see on the outside. I don't know how I feel about that. I do think I changed quite a bit since I've made this, but I am really happy with the technical skills in this artwork, and I still am very proud of how the values turned out on the left side right here. Even after a lot of time passed, I'm still very satisfied with the results. Something that I did struggle with here is the pose and the layout. It feels a bit random just sitting by a window with a cup. The next one is this Symbolic still life painting. It's a bit weird when you first look at it, so let me explain what's going on. This right here is a picture. We were supposed to paint this using black and white acrylic paint and do kind of a value study, trying to figure out where the lights and darks are and practice our techniques with acrylic paint. But then we are supposed to paste this from our sketchbook onto this canvas. It also has to have an animal and another object that somehow symbolically represents a part of your personality or who you want to become. Since the picture is black and white and everything else is in color, I think it just doesn't fit in here, and I don't know why we weren't allowed to do it in color, since in my opinion the flower and the bird were a lot more complicated to paint than the picture, and I was able to do those in color. And I still really like this bird right here. I still really enjoy painting birds. And another thing with this painting is the composition. It's kind of isn't very cohesive, and that's probably because I had to combine 3 different objects that were kind of unrelated. I wasn't allowed to use anything else to make the composition seem more natural and make it work. It was good practice with thinking about symbolism and working on more realistic acrylic painting techniques, but overall I'm not very proud of the end result. So next up, I really didn't want to even share this one because of how much I hate it. But this one's from the beginning of 2nd semester, I believe, and this was supposed to be like a get to know me poster, and again there's a bunch of things that are supposed to represent things about my life symbolically. I feel like that was a major theme during sophomore year, and I'm not sure why that is. That's just what the teacher wanted. I'm not happy with how this turned out at all. I think part of that might be because I kind of rushed it. I didn't have nearly as much time to work on it as I did with my other paintings. And also a really big problem is the paper that I used. I'm using watercolor here, but the paper is not watercolor paper, and as you can see it's like really thin paper that buckled and wrinkled a lot. It would have looked a lot better if I just used a different kind of paper. It didn't hold up very well with watercolor, and there's just this weird washed out look instead of like a proper watercolor effect and texture. The composition isn't great either. I actually do like this part in the middle here with the girl and the clouds and the mountains, but then the bottom corners especially, and like the top corners, I don't even know what's going on there. All the objects feel a bit random and like I just threw in a bunch of things together. The sizes don't really make sense. The composition, how I arranged the objects doesn't really make sense. It just all feels not purposeful enough. I also just wish I looked more at reference pictures, getting the objects to look more realistic and doing some more shading. So that's definitely something I can improve on for the future. And even though I really hate this painting, I think it's great to look back on and use it as a learning opportunity to understand what I need to do differently with my art. Oh yeah, and also I would probably want to add more darker values, as well as highlights. Everything is kind of in the mid-tone range and it just needs more contrast and more depth. So here is the next painting. This is also a watercolor painting, and here I actually used watercolor paper, and you can see compared to this how much nicer it looks. This was supposed to be inspired by an artist. I don't remember the name of the artist, but he basically did a lot of landscapes, like vertical ones with nature and fields and roads, as well as sometimes city scenes. I wanted to kind of show a juxtaposition of a city and vibrancy and kind of happy colors of nature, which I think turned out pretty well. But something I wish I did better on would be to be more bold with my colors and not be afraid to use colors that are not exactly realistic, because I think that's what the artist did a lot, and focus more on the mood of the painting. I feel like I was afraid to kind of go out of that more realistic color comfort zone. That would be an area of improvement. And I think the city over here also looks a little bit sloppy, honestly, so that's another thing. But overall, I love the vibrant colors, even though that's not my usual style. This piece just makes me want to spend a nice sunny summery day out in nature. I'm super excited to show you this next one. I couldn't even fit it on my desk because of the large gold frame that I put it in. It's definitely my favorite painting from my sophomore year, and I still display it in this beautiful gold frame in my room. It's supposed to combine 3 different artworks together. I think the assignment was called Emerging Masterpieces or something like that. And the artworks I combined were obviously Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh, and the field was from a painting by Claude Monet. I don't remember the exact name, but I think it has something to do with a field of poppies. And then the ladder over here is from the painting called Ladder to the Moon by Georgia O'Keeffe, which conveniently for me was just a painting of a ladder and a moon. So I took these 3 paintings and I combined them together. It worked really well in terms of composition, and I tried to be really intentional with choosing those kinds of paintings. I did have to change the Starry Night a little bit on the sky and make it less crowded and make the sky lighter so that it doesn't feel too overwhelming, since there's a lot going on in the field as well. I'm just really proud of how the composition is working. I also got to use the rule of thirds in placing the ladder and the moon right here, which is something our teacher goes on about all the time. I think I was able to really make it work for me in this composition. I think I spent over 2 weeks on it, working on it every single day. I'm just so happy with how it turned out. The only small thing that was kind of annoying during the process is that I had to use this really weird cake tempera material, and I wish we could just use like normal watercolor or acrylic paint. Instead we had to work with this really chalky, weird kids paint, and I had a lot of issues with lifting. You can kind of see it along the bottom here a little bit maybe. But that makes me even more proud of myself for being able to accomplish such a beautiful result with such bad supplies. Lastly, a bit of a smaller project are these 3 watercolor paintings inspired by Georgia O'Keeffe. The thing with these was that we had to use bad quality fake flowers for reference, so obviously there wasn't a lot of depth with them or any kind of visual interest, so I think I really had to combine my observation and my own imagination and ideas about different colors to kind of put together a more interesting and vibrant looking piece. I really tried to include bold backgrounds to add more depth to it. We also had to use these techniques with like salt. You can see it over here on the background right there and here as well as like rubbing alcohol drops, I think, over here on the petals. So those were kind of fun to use. I really hope you enjoyed this video and perhaps found some inspiration or learned something new. I plan on making another video about art from my junior year, which is a lot more like my current style, so be on the lookout for that.